entertaining talking sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. Before I get started, just want to let everybody know I will be live tonight for Q&A. We'll talk about it, whatever you want to call it. We'll talk about the state of the New York Giants fresh off their loss against the Arizona Cardinals, and I'll give my opinion on this team going forward, not just for this year, but for the future, and how I see them handling some of the situations on this football team. Of course, going in, I was very optimistic, and obviously, I was too optimistic. I thought the New York Giants were going to beat the Arizona Cardinals. I was fairly confident that they were going to, and at the end of the day, I'm a fan. They had 4 straight wins. Arizona had 3 straight losses. The New York Giants were showing growth. They were coming off one of their best wins in years in Seattle with Colt McCoy, their backup quarterback. And a lot of people point to individual people in this game for the loss, and I said in my post-game video, there are plenty of people that you could blame. We were outcoached. Nick Gates came out after the game and said that they were completely unprepared for the 4-4 scheme that the Arizona Cardinals presented. The offensive line, I don't think, drew near enough scrutiny in this loss by the New York Giants. There's not many teams that are going to win football games when you surrender 8 sacks. Some of that could go on the quarterback. Some of that definitely could go on the offensive line. And some of it maybe could go on the play calling. But regardless, we surrendered 8 sacks. The other thing that continues to be a big no-no for me the last 3 weeks has been the special teams play. And going into the year, that was thought to be a major strength for the New York Giants. We, of course, brought back Thomas McGaughey, one of the better special teams coordinators in the NFL, did a great job last year with the New York Giants. In addition to that, we brought in Joe Judge, who had the best special teams unit in football, as the coordinator with the New England Patriots to be our head coach. Well, the last 3 weeks, the special teams unit almost cost us 2 games. As a matter of fact, if Seattle would have recovered that block punt in the end zone for a touchdown, it very well may have cost us that game. It nearly cost us the game against the Cincinnati Bengals, where we surrendered a fake punt. We gave up a big punt return, and we gave up a touchdown on a kick return. And this week, it was one of the biggest reasons why we lost when Dion Lewis fumbled the ball on his own 20-yard line instead of kneeling it 2 yards deep. Was it the only reason? No, but the special teams continues to be a major problem with this New York Giants football team. And coming into the year, I knew, and I think a lot of realistic New York Giants fans knew, if the Giants were going to compete and win against superior football teams, we weren't going to be able to make mistakes. We were going to have to win the hidden yardage, and we weren't going to be able to turn the football over. And if our special teams continues to play like this, you could write off Cleveland. You could write off Baltimore. We're not beating those teams. We could overcome mistakes against teams that were better than, which I think, obviously, with Burrow out, we were better than the Cleveland Bengals. But if we don't play a near flawless game, we're not beating the Cleveland Browns. I'm telling you that right now. We don't stack up. We have to out-game plan them. We have to win the turnover battle, and we have to be good in special teams. So those are 2 areas that I really wanted to hit home with. I thought we were out-game plan. I thought the offensive line had a major regression, and I think our special teams continues to be a major problem. Of course, after the game, everybody's going to point to Daniel Jones, and everybody's going to point to Jason Garrett, rightfully so. There was reasons for criticism, on both accounts. Daniel Jones probably shouldn't have been playing the game. He definitely came out there, didn't look like himself, and later in the game, obviously shouldn't have been playing there on that last drive where he was limping to the huddle. And some people are criticizing Daniel Jones for playing and calling him selfish. That, to me, is on the coaching staff, and I'm a big Joe Judge defender. Any competitor is going to try to go out there and win football games. It is the coaching staff's job to do what is best for the team. It is not up to the player. So anybody criticizing Daniel Jones for going out there and trying to play, I disagree with completely. I put that on Joe Judge. That's the coaching staff's decision to make the decision onto who should start. They got to see Daniel Jones in practice, and they obviously Joe Judge felt that Daniel Jones gave the team the best opportunity to win. You could definitely argue about whether or not that was the case, but I put that on Judge much more than I put it on Daniel Jones. Colt McCoy, of course, won the last week, and Colt McCoy is not as good of a quarterback when Daniel Jones is completely healthy, but in this game, he was clearly limited. He didn't have the mobility and everything else. And people will forget the progress that Daniel Jones and this team showed the 4 prior weeks, because that's the way that the New York Giants fan base works and New York sports in general. The fact of the matter is we went a quarter of the season, over a month, without losing a football game, albeit against some weaker opponents, but we did beat the Seattle Seahawks. And in those games, Daniel Jones went 3 straight starts without turning over the football. I'm not telling you put the team on his back, and he still has a lot of growing to do. There's no doubt about it. But I'm not going to come on here and tell you that I've completely quit on Daniel Jones. A lot of people point to Jason Garrett and the offensive play calling. And in certain instances, I could definitely see the argument. A lot of people point to the fact that they think the New York Giants should be airing out the football more. That I completely disagree with. And that I actually like, that the New York Giants have committed to the ground game. Is it the best for Daniel Jones' growth? Maybe, maybe not, but at the end of the day, you're trying to win football games, and what gives this specific New York Giants team the best chance to win football games, at least in my opinion, going into the year, due to the fact that they had offensive limitations, and due to the fact going in, none of us thought this defense would be this good, was not to get into shootouts. It was to chew up the clock, play fundamentally sound football, and make throws when they needed to be made, at least in my opinion. Now, does this scheme fit Jones as well as Shurmur's scheme? That is certainly up for interpretation. Jones, of course, was drafted for Pat Shurmur's scheme, and it's why I was very outspoken as to why it may not be the best of decisions to move on from Pat Shurmur, because I was thinking of Daniel Jones specifically, not the team as a whole. And he definitely, in my opinion, fit the Shurmur scheme better. We also knew, if you were being realistic going into the year, that there were going to be growing pains with a new scheme. And if the Giants and Joe Judge decide that Jason Garrett is not the answer going forward, I'll get on board with it. At the end of the day, Joe Judge, for the most part, has made a lot of good decisions. His overall decision in terms of the coaching staff was very good. A lot of people, myself included, pointed to the fact that I thought that Garrett, even though I was on board with the hire, was more of a Mara-influenced decision, and he doesn't have any connections to Joe Judge. If Judge feels one of his guys, whoever it may be, whether it's somebody currently on the staff or somebody from the outside, gives Jones a better opportunity to get the most out of his abilities, I'm on board with it going into next year. What I will say about Daniel Jones going into next year, at the end of the day, next year, to me, for Daniel Jones, is a put up or shut up year. I'm going to give him the 2021 season. I'm going to see how the New York Giants build the team around him. I recognize there's some deficiencies to this offense, but I also recognize that Daniel Jones has not progressed this year. He's progressed in certain areas. I think his pocket awareness has gotten a little bit better. It's still not great. He's gotten better in terms of holding on to the football. And his pre-snap reads, I think, have gotten better. On the stat sheet, obviously, it has not been better if you just look at the touchdowns and the interceptions. He definitely still has a lot more growing up to do, and if the Giants get him a wide receiver, and if the Giants feel another scheme is better to get the most out of his abilities, by all means. Play callers mean a lot in the NFL. I look at Kyle Shanahan with Jimmy Garoppolo. They went to a Super Bowl. And there's many others. Jared Goff, obviously, with McVay, so on and so forth. And if the Giants feel they have a guy that could get the most out of this offense and could do a lot better job than J.C. Garrett, have at it. I am not for a lot of change at that position. I don't like that he'll have 3 different schemes in 3 different years. But what I'll say to that is this. If there is not significant growth next year, regardless of what the New York Giants do, that is when I will start to question a lot about whether or not the New York Giants should go forward with Daniel Jones. But I will definitely give him a 3rd year. At the end of the day, the way it works in the NFL, once you are done with your rookie contract, you're going to take up at least 12 to 15% of your team's salary cap. And if Daniel Jones can't win with the money he's making now, it will be even more challenging to win when he's taking up that kind of money on the salary cap. And I am a big believer, if you are not at least a top 10 quarterback, it does not warrant that decision. And right now, if you ask me, of course, Daniel Jones is not a top 10 quarterback. I will give him another year with better weapons and maybe possibly a better scheme to get the most out of it. But I will not use a scheme in year 3, even though it's not the best of situations. 3 different schemes in 3 years, and I will not use Jason Garrett as an excuse next year either. He needs to grow, and he needs to grow fast. In terms of the positives this year, the offensive line has gotten much better. Last week, hopefully, is an outlier, and they don't go back to the way they were over the first half of the season. But the fact of the matter is this. I'm going to be a man of my word. I'm not going to be doom and gloom off of one loss. Going into the year, and of course, expectations change throughout the year. When we had an opportunity to make the playoffs, you start thinking playoffs. But going into the year, this season for me, and I think for a lot of New York Giants fans, was about growth. And we've seen that. The New York Giants have definitely established a run-first identity. The defense is definitely much better than you could have ever expected. And overall, I think a lot of us think that the coaching staff has been very good. I also think we think that a lot of our free agency signings were good, and the draft was good. And one game does not change that. The New York Giants this year have shown fight when they get punched in the mouth. Well, they got punched in the mouth last week, and we'll see what they come out against the Cleveland Browns. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to win the football game. The New York Giants are not as good as the Cleveland Browns. We have to be fair, and we have to be realistic. But in their 2 times where they got embarrassed, they came out and they fought against superior opponents. One being the Rams, a game in which they went tooth and nail all the way down to the wire. The other, of course, being the Tampa Bay Bucks, where they narrowly lost and probably should have won. So we'll see what the New York Giants got coming out this week against the Cleveland Browns. But you saw that team put up 42 points last week. They have one of the best rushing attacks in football, and the Giants will not be able to go toe-for-toe scoring points against that football team. They will have to slow down the pace, and they will have to find a way to win it in the trenches and try to create some turnovers. And Baker Mayfield is not allergic to throwing turnovers, and we'll see what Patrick Graham and the New York Giants defense draws up. But they cannot be outcoached in this game. They cannot be out-hustled in this game. and they need to create some mistakes, and they can't make any mistakes of their own if they have any opportunity to beat the Cleveland Browns. They have to play a clean football game. But at the end of the day, this team has grown, and I want to see them continue to grow over these last 3 weeks, whether it's a win or whether it's a loss. Go out there, play strong, fundamental football, and let's see where it gets us. Am I still thinking playoffs? It's still a possibility. Listen, if we beat Cleveland and Washington loses this week to Seattle, we're tied. And the way I look at it is if we beat the Ravens, we're in the playoffs. That will not be easy. You saw the way Lamar Jackson played, and you saw how we did when we went up against the Arizona Cardinals. But the mission for me at the start of the year was never playoffs. It was about growth and about giving us hope going into the 2021 season. For people talking about giving up on Daniel Jones and for people talking about trading Saquon Barkley, that's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. And if you're going to do that, I do not want to hear that you believe in 2021. That at least is my opinion. If you're going to draft a quarterback, that throws away the 2021 season in terms of being a playoff football team, which is fine if you feel that is in the best interest of this football team. You look at Justin Herbert this year on a team that went to the playoffs just 2 years ago with the LA Chargers. They have 4 wins, and he's playing as good as any rookie quarterback you could ever ask to play. I don't think any quarterback we draft we would think would exceed that. Tua, of course, is in a much different situation where he's not asked to carry the football team. And, of course, Saquon Barkley. You'd basically be saying, let's give up on our 2nd overall pick and 6th overall pick just 3 years after the fact we drafted Barkley, 2 years after the fact we drafted Jones. And at that point, you're starting a rebuild. And at that point, there's probably a new GM in here. And we're starting again from scratch with some nice pieces on the offensive and defensive line. If you believe in 2021, you're going forward with Jones for 1 more year. And you're probably going forward with Barkley for 1 more year. And we'll see where this team could take us. We'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. Hopefully, Jones progresses significantly in his 3rd year. Is it likely? I'd be lying to you right now if I told you that it was, but it's certainly still possible. You look at Josh Allen in his 3rd year, even though he definitely showed more signs in his 2nd year than Jones has, he's now playing at a near MVP level, albeit with a much better supporting cast. And we'll see the supporting cast they're able to support Jones with this year. But at the end of 2021, if Jones is not at least peaking and starting to become what we feel is a near top 10 quarterback, I think the Giants will have to think long and hard about making that change. But I'm still giving him another year to support him and build this team around him. I do not believe in reaching for quarterbacks. And at this point in time, the Giants more than likely will be picking outside of the top 5 or 6. And even if they were picking anywhere outside of number 1, I'm probably not taking a quarterback in this year's draft. I'm building up the roster for Daniel Jones, and if Daniel Jones fails, building up the roster for the future quarterback that we will be bringing in on a rookie deal or potentially a free agent. A lot of people will point to free agency and say we should bring in Dak Prescott. Where's the money coming from? We don't have it. Right now we have $22 million in cap space, and a lot of people want to retain a lot of the players that are currently on our roster. I say we go forward with Jones for 1 more year, and if it doesn't work, that's when you make the change. As always, guys, if you like what you watch, please subscribe. Drop a comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.